Hey everyone! I can't believe I'm saying what I'm about to say, but I'm starting my final round of seeds indoors. I do still have seeds that I'm going to direct sow. In fact, some of these I am going to direct sow, but I wanted to go through them all with you and the different varieties I'm growing. But basically we're at kind of the 4 week before last frost date, and I am planting all of my zinnias and some of the dwarf single mix dahlias that I got from So Right Seeds. But I've said this before, if for some reason I was told I could only grow one type of flower in my garden, it would be zinnias, because there are so many different sizes you can get. Again, I'm starting some dwarf ones that are going to be a foot tall. I'm growing some that can get 5 to 6 feet tall. There's so many different varieties of colors and structure of the blooms, and they're so incredibly productive. So zinnias are cut and come again flowers, which means the more you cut, the more blooms you will get. So if you grow zinnias, harvest them so that your plant will continue to become productive. If I didn't grow zinnias, I don't think I would be able to do the amount of giveaway bouquets that I currently do, because I produce so many flowers in my rooftop deck container gardens that I don't even know what to do with all of them. So I give them away to other people, and it's been really, really great. Now I will say, if you're into like drying flowers, which I also love drying flowers as well, these aren't the best ones to dry, but if you want an incredibly productive, beautiful flower that's also one of the most, if not the most flower that pollinators are attracted to in my garden, I can't recommend zinnias highly enough. The main issue that I deal with zinnias is powdery mildew, and I'll get more into disease and pest issues in a little bit. But first, I want to go through all of the varieties that I'm starting. Now, I know I have shown you, I have my Jiffy Pea pellets here. I've shown you how I use these before, so I might just do a quick recap, but most of the time in this video, I want to focus on the varieties I'm growing, the ones I'm starting indoors versus direct sowing, and then again, any of like the kind of maintenance or pest issues that I have to deal with. So first, let's go over the varieties that I have. This is the largest number of zinnias I have ever started before. I am going to start indoors, most of them. I'm going to direct sow a lot of them too. Zinnias are a great flower to direct sow if you don't want to start inside, because they grow so quickly. That's why they're in my last round, like 3 to 4 weeks before, because again, I want to not have to pot them up from these pellets. I want them to be able to stay happily in here until they go out to the garden. So definitely don't start these too early. I don't know which ones I should go through first. Maybe I'll start with, well, I'm most excited about a lot of them. I'm going to start with the Queenie Lime series. So I think everybody loves this series. I feel like when people are asked what their favorite zinnias are, it's usually Queenie Lime, which I think used to be called Queen Lime. Last year, so 2023, I grew Queen Lime with Blush, and I'm doing that again this year using the seeds that I had from last year. This is probably my favorite one so far, just because I like the combination of like the lime green and the hints of pink in it. What I also grew last year was Queen Red Lime. So yeah, it was called, okay, yeah, because these say Queen on them. So this was Queen Red Lime, it's now Queenie. I'll link down all of these below, but these are from Johnny's Seed. You can get them from other growers as well, but Queen Red Lime, which I also love the color of those, because it was kind of more of a like, not a true red, but like a, I don't know, kind of orangish, reddish color. It was really beautiful, kind of more pinky. Then I got 2 new varieties from Johnny's Seed, Queenie Lemon Peach. So this is the only one that has lemon in it, but it's also really pretty. And then Queenie Lime Orange, which is kind of like the blush, but instead of the blushy pink color, it's going to be orange. Now, because I love these so much, I think these are going to be the star of my garden, and I consider that the zinnias that are planted in my center raised bed. It's the largest raised bed. I've grown zinnias in it since 2021, which is when I think I got it. I've done giant Benary zinnias. I did Cinderella and Oklahoma zinnias in it. I did all Cinderellas last year, which I am still growing, but I just think I want the centerpiece of that garden to be the Queenie Lime series. So any of the ones that I'm like, I know I definitely need in my garden, I am starting indoors just to make sure they germinate and then moving them outside. I also do sometimes like direct sow a backup in the same spot, just in case, so I have something going in there. So those are the 4 Queenie Limes. Then, because I mentioned the giant, I don't know if it's Benary or Benary, but it's B-E-N-A-R-Y. I think this was the first zinnia I ever grew, and what it was the Binary Giant Mix. So I didn't know what colors I was gonna get. They were way too large to grow in my elevated bed. I do grow them much lower because, well, these are gonna get, it says 40 to 50 inches tall, but mine got taller than me and I'm 5'4". I think they got over, maybe they were close to my height. So they were over 60 inches for sure. So these get tall. So I would not grow these in anything that's already elevated off of the ground. These are now gonna grow in my grow bags, which are on the deck. And I don't know if I'm gonna do the mix this year. I'm gonna start some seeds, but basically what I did is from the mix, I then chose my favorite colors and got specifically seeds for those. So I'm also growing Binary Giant Coral Zinnias and Binary Giant Wine Zinnias, which I grew last year, the wine, and then Coral is new to me for this year. Now, let me double check the height of these because, yeah, the Queenie Lime were all 30 to 40 inches tall. So these are kind of what I would consider the medium height of the zinnias that I grow in my garden. Giant Binaries are obviously the tall ones. Speaking of tall ones, and another variety I'm really excited for are Floret's zinnias. Now, these are the most expensive seed packets I've ever bought. I think they were like $18 or $19, but I think it's worth it for all the work she's put in. And then the goal is that you can then save your own seeds and start them again the following years. So I got precious metals. When I got this, didn't look at the height, which I know I need to do that every time before I actually buy plants, but these are also tall. So these can get 48 to 56 inches, again, based on my experience. Usually zinnias for me get taller, but it's just such a pretty color scheme and kind of fits into especially my back deck garden, which is kind of the lighter tones, the pinks, the oranges. I think this is going to be so pretty. This, I'm pretty sure, is going to be part of my border behind my couch where I'm going to do individual grow bags. I'm going to do like a dinner plate dahlia, then a giant zinnia. Dinner plate dahlia, giant zinnia. At least that's my goal. And I think I'm going to use these here. And again, because I'm so excited about these, starting them inside to make sure that they germinate, and then also we'll probably direct sow some as well. Two other one, well, no, actually we're going to go into Zinderellas next because I grew these last year, but I do have another color variety. So these are again kind of like medium height zinnias, like 3 to 4 feet. Last year I grew Zinderella Peach, Zinderella Red, and Zinderella Purple in the center raised bed. So those were kind of the stars last year. And then I also added Zinderella Lilac and Zinderella Orange. These are all from Park Seed. I like the shape of these a lot. They have a very floofy is the most accurate way I can describe it. A very like cute, floofy little center. The blooms can all be like slightly different than each other too, which I really like their slight variation. So I think those are just super cute and I absolutely love those, which is why I added more colors of those for this year. But I don't know exactly where they're gonna go yet. I know I'm gonna put them somewhere. I just don't know where. Then I have, let's do these two. These are from Botanical Interests, and I got Zinnia Envy, which it's green, so green with envy. I just think that's such a cool color. Now I do have the Queen Lime with blush and orange, and if this is just kind of a pure lime color, I think those will make the prettiest bouquets. So that was the main reason I got these. These are about 24 to 30 inches tall, so again, kind of in that medium range of of zinnias for me. And then I also got this one because it's really pretty. These say just 24 inches tall, but it's Zinnia Mentioned. I've never grown either of these before, but these look like they have kind of pink or red inside of the petals and then white on the outside. So I'm really excited to try both of these. Now the ones I think I'm going to direct sow, partially because some are miniature varieties and partially because I don't know if I have enough room for all of the ones that I want to actually sow yet, but Zinnia Thumbelina, which I just showed you in my dwarf seed haul, these are going to go in small planters to kind of create a low border. These are only 10 to 15 inches in height, so I'm excited. I also might put some of these in my bucket planters as well. But these I'm going to direct sow for a couple of reasons. One, I want to test direct versus starting indoors. Most of the time, I have started seeds for my zinnias inside. I was watching a YouTube video by, I think it's Blossom and Branch Farm. I'll link it down below. And I know that everyone's garden is different. Everyone's gardening environment is completely different, but she said she did notice less powdery mildew on the ones she started outside versus the ones inside. So I'm just gonna do some testing because gardening really is one large experiment. So I'm gonna try it. I also might try like some of the ones I'm starting inside. I might direct sow some of those also outside. Then I have a whole bunch more of the Parks Picks zinnias from Park Seed. So I have Parks Picks Coral. Say that 5 times fast. I have Parks Picks Carmine Rose. I have Parks Picks White. Parks Picks Yellow. Parks Picks Purple. Parks Picks Deep Red. And then Parks Picks Lilac. So I know I don't have space for all of these, but some of the ones where I don't currently have zinnia colors, like for example, the Carmine. I love the color Carmine in general, but I might do some of those. I do have coral, so I probably won't do those. Deep red and white, I might add in just to have some more color varieties. But if I have room for all of them, I will plant all of them. I just also have to be realistic about my gardening limitations. And then the other one I'm starting that isn't a zinnia is again from the dwarf mix, and it's the Dahlia Dwarf single mix. So these again, we're only gonna get to about 10 to 16 inches tall. So I might do a mixed border of miniature zinnias and miniature dahlias, and I think that'll be really pretty. What I have started, I've already soaked my 2 Jiffy Pete pellet trays. So there are 36 each of the pellets. So I can start 72 minus the ones I'm starting outside. So let's move these and these. So the Thumbelina and then the Parks Picks zinnias, put them off to the side so I don't accidentally plant them because I've done that a few times. And then everything else we will put into these trays. So let's just start with one. So I have my paintbrush that I use to make the holes. I have my labels so I don't forget which seeds are which. And then I have my towel that I use to dry off my fingers, just because once your fingers get wet as you're working with like the potting soil, the peat pellets, then the seeds stick to it. So I always have something to dry my fingers off. So like I said, I'm gonna do this part a little bit faster because I have shown it in 2 different videos now. And then we will get all these seeds planted. So first I'm gonna do 8 total cells of precious metals. I don't have room for 8, but I'm gonna start 8 because I wanna make sure that I have some and I'm really excited about them. Any flowers that I don't have room for in my garden, I give away, and either I will leave them out front on the sidewalk with a sign, or there is a local school that I give some flowers to, and I think their color scheme this year is purples. So any of the purple plants, I'm already gonna start some extra for them anyway. Let's go ahead and plant some Floret zinnias. And with zinnias, you don't have to do anything special like soaking the seeds beforehand. You don't need to scarify the surface. They don't need light to germinate. So they're pretty just straightforward seeds. So these say about 1/4 inch deep. So I'm making my 8 holes here. And then I'm gonna do, because it's a new pack and because I don't wanna have to thin too many if all the seeds germinate, I'm just gonna do 2 per cell. Sometimes I do 2 or 3. I usually don't do more than 3 unless they're tiny and they fall in the hole. But I want to make sure I have germination, but also make sure I don't have to thin too many. All right, the Floret seeds are sown. So next I'm going to go through the Benary Giant, and I'm going to do 4 of each of the 3 varieties because I already know I probably don't even have room for 4. So if I get all 4 to germinate, I'll have extras anyway. So I'm going to start with the coral, I'll do wine, and then I will do the mix, which again, the mix, I have no idea what the colors are until they bloom. All right, all of my giant zinnias, so the ones that are 5 feet or taller, are sown. Next, I'm gonna do the Zinnia Envy and the Zinnia Mazurkia. I think I'm also only gonna do 4 of each of those, which means I'll have 2 rows of 4 left. So I'll probably put some of my Zinderellas in there. So I'm struggling with this botanical interest seed packet. I will say, so of the ones that I have, Like Park seed, you have to tear a strip off, so then there's no easy way to close it. These were just hard to open. My favorite seed packets are Johnny's seed because you open the flap and it's really easy to open and then it's resealable. So if all of the seed packets came like this, that would make me very happy. One tray of zinnias down, and I'm just sprinkling the vermiculite like I do. Again, this is to help prevent dampening off of the seedlings. And so I just add a layer like this. And this bag has lasted me, again, it's not like I start a ton of seeds compared to other gardeners, but this bag has lasted me at least 3 years that I've used it. Like this will be the 3rd year of using this bag. So one benefit of smaller gardens is you go through supplies a lot slower. Lid on, and these will store in the bathroom until they germinate. Again, the reason I put mine in the bathroom is just because it's the warmest part of the house, and those don't need light to germinate, or else they would go directly under the grow light. I don't use heat mats. I've never had issues with things germinating. They might not germinate as quickly as potentially something with a heat mat, but if I don't have to get something for seed starting that I'm only going to use for like a month or 2 out of the year, then I try not to, but that doesn't mean I'll never get heat mats if I find that they would be really useful. So now let's fill up this second tray, and then once these actually do germinate, I have to do a little bit of reconfiguration with my grow light stand that I'll show you when I get to that, because I don't have enough light space for all of the seeds, but I do have a solution. So I'll show you that in some other maintenance tasks probably next week, because again, these will germinate and need light fairly quickly. So now I'm going to start with my Queenie Lime, the 4 that I have here. Actually, let me kind of count these out. 3, 4. Yeah, I can only do 4 of each because again, that's all I'm going to need. Then I'll do 4 of my remaining Cinderellas, or I might do extra again of the lilac and purple to give away. And then 1 row of the dwarf dahlias. So let's get this going. That's this tray completely filled. So let me talk a little bit about like pests and maintenance of zinnias. I will say the biggest issue I have every year with my zinnias is powdery mildew, except the first year I planted them in 2021. I had no powdery mildew, and that definitely set my expectations a lot higher than they should have been. Since then, that's kind of what takes my zinnias out later in the season is the powdery mildew. And I've done some research, I have a whole video on it, trying to figure out what's causing it, what I can do. The main thing is that powdery mildew likes humidity. Zinnias are not native to humid areas, so if you are gardening in a humid area, like I do here in Chicago, that can definitely increase your chances of getting powdery mildew on zinnias compared to other growing environments. Now, when I first started looking into powdery mildew, I think the assumption was it's the water on the leaves. Then there's some research that says that doesn't actually cause it and can actually help inhibit the spread because it keeps the powdery mildew particles on the leaf instead of being able to blow away in the wind. But it's just the general humidity around the plant. So some ways to treat it is one, by spacing appropriately, which I'm going to try to do a better job of this year. I am going to grow zinnias, some of my giant ones, individually in their own grow bags, and I'm going to see if that works better than zinnias I mix in with my beds, because that's where I've noticed it worse was on zinnias that I had kind of more tightly packed together. in my raised beds and other flowers and not a lot of airflow. So spacing. 2, pruning to keep the airflow circulating through. I'm going to be better about pruning this year instead of kind of letting these get out of control. Also, I learned from another Instagram gardener is that because powdery mildew usually affects the older leaves first, so she'll just periodically remove the lower leaves ahead of time before the powdery mildew takes over. But as soon as you see powdery mildew, you want to get that leaf off the plant. Off the plant, get that leaf in the trash. You don't want to compost it or anything. And then if you've touched it with your hands or your gloves, wash those before you touch other parts of the plant so that you're not the one spreading powdery mildew. Also, fungicides, spraying your leaves preventatively with fungicide. I'm going to try doing that a little bit more, but I think those were kind of the main recommendations for preventing or treating powdery mildew. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed. And then, like I said, I'm going to see if I noticed at least a difference between direct sown zinnias and zinnias that I started indoors in terms of powdery mildew. Now, pests, I usually just deal with 2 main pests on my zinnias. One is aphids. I feel like early in the season, like maybe June, I'll see aphids on my zinnias. I blast them with the jet stream on my hose a few times, and they're usually gone after a couple days. And then typically I don't see them back the rest of the season. So I've luckily never had a bad aphid infestation. The other pest is usually Japanese beetles that come closer to the end of the season. Those I pick off with a gloved hand and throw them in some soapy water. So those I just hand pick off of my zinnias. I don't want to jinx it, but again, I've never had super terrible pest infestations. There's just been like enough that I can manage with the hose or with my hands. Other maintenance. So these can typically handle poor quality soil. They don't need to be fertilized as much as other annuals, but growing in containers, I always fertilize more than if I was gardening in the ground because nutrients leave containers a lot faster than they would the ground. Same thing with watering. These can handle less water than other annuals, but I'm in a container garden, so I still need to water fairly regularly, especially I think for the 7-gallon grow bags. Those are probably going to dry out some of the fastest of the containers that these are in. So always keep that in mind. When there's recommendations for growing in the ground, it might be just a little bit different if everything you're growing is in containers. But then, yeah, keep harvesting. You can pinch the plants when they are young if you want a bushier plant, but I also just like harvest so much, I feel like I'm making the plant bushier anyway. But my plan is to try to be a little bit better about pruning. Oh, also staking. So typically I don't have to stake the smaller ones, like the miniature ones, the Thumbelina, I'm not going to stake those. But once they start to get like 4 feet or taller, so my giant zinnias, I always have some sort of staking system in place. Even though I think they say no staking required, let me see. No support necessary. I have not found that to be the case up here. Maybe it's the wind, I don't know. But these definitely get knocked and blown around up on my rooftop deck. So I will use just like smaller plant cages. Sometimes I'll just stick in like poles and use twine. Oftentimes though, other than the giant ones, I might need to add some supports later, but that's been totally fine in my garden. So even if it does say no support necessary, it might be necessary for your growing space. But I think that's it. I think that's everything with the zinnias. I'm so excited to have these now. And it's weird that I'm not going to be starting anything else indoors. Like, what am I going to do with myself now for these next few weeks? Normally, I'll move these out mid-May. After Mother's Day is kind of the safe day for us here in Chicago, but based on how the weather's been, it will probably be earlier. Who knows? But then it could be earlier and Mother Nature comes through and snows in May. You never know what she's going to do. But typically, these are going out mid-May, and they're one of my first to bloom. I would say I have flowers by early to mid-June. So yeah, I'll keep you updated on how these go. When I direct sow the other ones, I'll obviously make a video about that, and then we'll see how they do throughout the season. Let me know if you're growing any zinnias this year and what varieties you have, and then I will see you in the next video. Bye.